I was standing where my dad used to park the John Deere, staring at a shiny iron gate with a fresh aluminum sign that read, Cedar Ridge Meadows, residents only. And behind it were streetlights and perfect sidewalks, and 61 copy-paste houses sitting on the acres my family held since Harry Truman and the woman in pearls who clicked toward me introduced herself like a headline. I'm Cheryl Whitman, HOA president, then told me I was trespassing on my own dirt, and I remember touching the worn edge of my father's deed in my back pocket and saying calm as I could, "Ma'am, this land is the coal place." And she smiled like a knife and said, "Not anymore." And that was the moment I stopped trying to be polite and started being methodical. My name is Mason Cole. I run coal wrecking and abatement out of Raven County, Ohio. And yeah, I tear down bad ideas for a living. After my dad passed, I took an overseas demo contract to keep the business afloat. Our neighbor, Mirti Dugan, kept watch on the farm until he didn't. He died in his sleep. And in that quiet pocket, someone with a gold pen and no conscience made their move. So I drove to my attorney, sat Dad's deed on the table, and watched her lay out a stack of official records that said, I had missed taxes, and the county sold my 80 acres for the price of a rusty pickup. Seal stamps a mailing log that looked perfect if you didn't know what you were looking at. And my attorney, Dana Brooks, just tapped the stack and said, Your auto pays never missed, Mason. Somebody inside the system did this, and the heat that crawled up my neck said, Grab an excavator. But demolition rule number 1 is simple. Angry breaks things. Methodical wins. So we kept it quiet and built a small team. Tessa Vaughn, the PI, with a teacher's smile and a sniper camera. Professor Alan Chu, the document guy who can tell which printer a page came from, by the way. The toner sits. And Priya Desai, the accountant, who can follow money through shell companies like it's a Sunday stroll. And in week 1, they found the rot. The mailed delinquency notice with no certified barcode, no USPS trail. Just a ghost entry in the county system. Seals pressed at angles till clerks don't use a date stamp that didn't exist the year the deed supposedly filed. HOA dues at $575 a month, flowing from 61 homes into Ridgeway Services, a management company owned by a cousin in Delaware. Then leaking back through padded vendor invoices. Landscaping and pool and security, all priced 35 to 60% high. Little streams pooling in accounts that said, Whitman, and if you're wondering how you pull that off without getting caught, well, Cheryl's husband Grant was deputy county administrator, and he oversaw records and assessments and permits. You know what I mean. I didn't want enemies out of the folks living in those houses. So I went to a Tuesday HOA meeting in a flannel and dusty boots and sat in the back. Cheryl ran that room like a cruise director with a cattle prod. Fines are increasing because standards questions are not comments. Comments are not questions. And the faces around me were tired and careful. And after the meeting, I introduced myself to a young couple by a silver SUV. Lily and Tom and I showed them Dad's deed and the tax receipts, and a clean timeline. And I watched Lily move from confusion to embarrassment to anger. She held behind her teeth. What does this mean for us? She asked, and I told her the truth. You bought your home in good faith. I'm not ripping your porch out from under you. My fight is with the people who stole, not the families who got sold. And they nodded the way people nod when hope is brand new and fragile. Word spread that I was talking to homeowners, and Cheryl hit back with yellow notices stapled to my job trailer. Unauthorized structure. $500 per day. Unpermitted equipment. $500 per day. Noise violation. $500 per day. and 6 days later. Her math said, I owed $9,000 to the HOA sitting on my land than a county inspector showed with a smirk and a clipboard. Move your excavators in 72 hours, and at the bottom of his work order was Grant Whitman's signature. Yeah, that happened, so I photographed every page, and Dana texted 3 words, document, ignore, escalate, and we kept going. Tessa found the next shoe, Phase 2, fresh permits for 37 more houses on the South Acreage, with a forged version of my signature. So good, Professor Chu got a headache deposits already taken by a new developer for $1.6 million. A survey line that drifted straight through a piece of state game land. And that kind of thing wakes up federal folks fast. If you've ever been caught in a riptide, you know you don't thrash, you angle with the pull and walk out where the water is honest. So Dana filed a quiet title lawsuit with just enough sloppy commas to make a certain kind of person puff up. And Cheryl did what Cheryl does. She set up a press tent by the HOA pool and told every camera in Raven County that my lawsuit was frivolous, and here's the gift. The Deputy Administrator Whitman personally oversaw the transaction that put Cedar Ridge on the map. And when she said personally oversaw into live microphones, I felt it like rebar under my boot. While she was performing, I sat at kitchen tables, Carlos and Naomi Diaz, with a binder of letters like medical records. Irene and Walt McKee, retired teachers, fined $250 for a Christmas angel that wasn't on the approved pallet. Lily and Tom, with their contract covered in sticky notes, and in living rooms and driveways. We built a neighborhood coalition. No bullhorns, just hands and texts, and one promise. Nobody loses their home because a bully wrote a rule. Cheryl launched a Facebook group with a steel-hard name and leaked a twisted version of our plan to make titles legitimate, a TV station called Me a Land Baron, who wanted families to buy their dirt twice my phone filled with unknown numbers and messages I wouldn't read to my mother. And Dana said, soft and steady, "This is what it looks like when people who have never heard no start to hear it." Then the SUVs rolled into my yard one Tuesday afternoon, and my foreman DeAndre stuck his head in my door and said, "Boss Pearls is here," and Cheryl walked in with 4 men built like refrigerators. "We need to talk," she said, and I closed the door and set my phone face down. Recording, and she offered $2 million clean, if I dropped everything, or a decade of legal tar. If I didn't promise to leak gossip about my team to tie up titles until my own neighbors blamed me, and I walked her out without raising my voice and said, "Next time talk to Agent Collins," and she blinked like someone turned the lights on. Agent Renee Collins from the FBI had already seen our file. The ghost mail, the fake stamps, the state landline, and she said she could go RICO, but needed Cheryl to connect her public lies to her private threats on tape. So I wore a wire the size of a sugar packet to a borrowed lake house, where Cheryl poured whiskey I didn't touch and smiled without warmth, and told me judges owed her. Reporters owed her. Her husband could make records evaporate and cases fall apart. Say yes and no one remembers this. Say no, and I will pick off your little coalition until they cry. Uncle, and my heart kicked like a road drill, but my voice stayed even, and the front door sighed open, and Agent Collins walked in. With 3 agents. Like it was rehearsal. "Cheryl Whitman, you're under arrest for witness intimidation, obstruction, conspiracy to extort hands where I can see them." And for the first time, I saw fear cut through the steel. They picked up Grant an hour later. The indictments followed. Wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. And Leonard Pruitt at the assessor's office flipped with emails, where Grant told him which boxes to check and which to leave blank, and Robert Hale, the HOA treasurer, brought 2 ledgers, the pretty one for meetings, and the real one with kickbacks in neat columns. And Professor Chu put forgery under a microscope for the jury, and Priya mapped the money with little arrows that all ended at the same couple's lifestyle. And then my wire played. Cheryl's voice promising to ruin families one by one, until I took her deal. And I don't love courtrooms, but I loved the moment Judge Meredith Keegan looked straight at Cheryl and said, "Bail revoked after the Costa Rica ticket, and rubber-banded cash remanded." And that word feels like a deep breath. Grant took 8 years with cooperation. Leonard got probation. Cheryl fought until the last second, and then tried to spin on the stand, and the prosecutor kept it simple. Show the public notice of the auction. Explain the date stamp that wasn't manufactured that year. Explain why HOA dues flowed to your cousin's shell. And the jury didn't buy clerical error or best practices. And when the guilty verdict hit, I didn't look at Cheryl. I looked at Lily and Tom. And the retired teachers. And I thought about the morning at the gate, and the choice I made not to swing a bigger hammer to feel better, but to be patient, to document, to find every weak bolt and turn it until the frame gave. People ask if I bulldozed the houses, and the answer is, no, kids learned to ride bikes on those cul-de-sacs. Families made casseroles and memories there. So the plan from day one was to use seized assets and restitution to make homeowners whole, to sell the dirt under each house for what it should have cost in the first place, to clear titles, clean, to set up zero-interest plans for anyone who needed help. And some folks cursed me out anyway. Some held out because it's hard to trust the man with the excavators. But most took a breath across a folding table and said, "Okay, let's end this." And we did. I could end on the click of the cuffs. That's the movie moment. But the truth is messier and better because what sticks with me isn't her face. When the verdict landed, it's the way Lily's shoulders finally dropped when the title in her hand was real. It's the quiet at my father's gate. Now that belongs to us again. It's the thought that bullies don't stop at the edge of your lawn, and if you're lucky, you get to be the push. So tell me, would you have taken the money to save yourself? The fight. Was I right to protect the families first and go at the ringleaders in court? Can neighbors take an HOA back, or is the system a magnet for Cheryl's? Have you been fined for a mailbox color, or a Christmas angel, or a truck parked 1 inch over a line? Drop your take and your story in the comments. Argue with me like neighbors who share a fence. And if this hit a nerve, if you've ever been told to leave your own gate, tap subscribe and stick around. We'll keep finding weak bolts, and we'll keep turning.